Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. There's even a brand new Brigadier General tier where you can get a shout out on a Commander's Quarters episode that's dedicated to you. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Sam, who's been supporting this channel as a Golden Pig tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Sam, so again, Sam, thank you so much. And for the personalized deck tech, Sam chose Derevi, Empyrial Tactician, with a focus on evasive creatures like flyers, utilizing Tims and untapped triggers, and, well, a lot of fun things. Derevi is a 2/3 bird wizard with flying that costs green, white, blue. She has, when she enters the battlefield or a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may tap or untap target permanent. On top of that, Derevi essentially has a way to get around the commander tax by paying 1 green, white, blue. You can put Derevi onto the battlefield from the command zone. While that is a nice benefit, this deck is most definitely going to focus on that trigger. Being able to tap or untap things whenever we hit opponents with our creatures is a very powerful thing. We've got plenty of cool and very powerful effects and ways to use and abuse this trigger. But before we jump into those cards, I just want to mention that every single card in this deck outside of the commander is less than $1, so this is a very budget-friendly deck. And with all that said, let's jump into those cards. First up, obviously we want a lot of low-to-the-ground and evasive creatures, and, well, things pretty much don't get better than cards like Slitherblade, Gadul Lurker, Mistcloaked Herald, and Triton Shorestalker. Each of these might be small creatures, each with only 1 power, but they only cost 1 mana as well, and none of them can be blocked. So again, in combat, these are essentially guaranteed hits, and again, that's guaranteed triggers with our commander. I mean, at the very least, we can untap some of our lands and, well, get the mana back that we actually put into these, and again, that's just 1 trigger. Regardless, outside of just pure unblockability, we've got other forms of evasion, which we can see on Soltari Foot Soldier and Wingcrafter. Soltari Foot Soldier is a 1/1 that has Shadow, which is a very old mechanic, but a very effective one. It basically means that this creature can only block or be blocked by creatures with Shadow, and yeah, there aren't really many creatures with Shadow that see basically any play in Commander. So, although Soltari Foot Soldier pretty much can't block any creature, it also really can't be blocked. And then Wingcrafter has Soul Bond, and as long as it's paired with another creature, both creatures have flying. Now, flying isn't a perfect form of evasion, but it's a very good one, and most of the time it can get through on at least 1 opponent. And Wingcrafter, again, because it has Soul Bond, is going to pair with another creature, and then both those creatures have flying. So, yeah, this can help another creature get through as well. But of course, we've got even more low-to-the-ground flyers, and some that even provide us some value with Fairy Seer, Merfolk Windrobber, and Topplegeist. Fairy Seer has, when it enters the battlefield, Scry 2. Merfolk Windrobber is going to mill a player when it deals combat damage to them, and then we can sacrifice it to draw a card, but only if that opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. And then Topplegeist actually has an ETB. It's going to tap down target creature an opponent controls, and it's got Delirium at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. If there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, tap target creature that player controls. So yeah, for 1 mana, this 1/1 flyer can provide us a lot of value. Speaking of which, we've also got Siren Stormtamer, Judge's Familiar, and Healer's Hawk. Siren Stormtamer has pay a blue, sacrifice it, counter-target spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. So this can be a great way to protect one of our key creatures like Derevi. And then Judge's Familiar says, sacrifice it, counter-target instant sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1. Next up though, Healer's Hawk provides value in a different way with flying and lifelink. So yeah, we can just gain some life with this throughout the game. Moving on though, we've got some cards that are slightly more than 1 mana with Invisible Stalker and Looter Ilkor. Invisible Stalker makes up for that though, having both hexproof and it can't be blocked as well. And then Looter Ilkor has Shadow, so again, it's basically unblockable, and it can't block, but that's okay. But when it deals combat damage to an opponent, we draw a card, then discard a card. So yeah, an unblockable Looter, sign me up. And then Andric Lunarch Marshal can help us out in a lot of situations. It has at the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. The same is true for Flying, Death Touch, Double Strike, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Skulk, Trample, and Vigilance. Basically, this spreads out keywords from our creatures to each other. So at the very least, with our commander in play, this can essentially make all of our creatures evasive by giving them flying. And if we've got something like Invisible Stalker in play, they're also going to get hexproof, which can be very helpful as well. Regardless, what are some ways that we can benefit from all those creatures hitting our opponents? First off, Reconnaissance Mission says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So yeah, we can draw a ton of cards with this in this deck. Speaking of which, Deep Fathom Skulker is basically the exact same thing, but on a creature. It says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. On top of that, we can pay 3 and a colorless to make target creature unblockable this turn if we need to. Next up, we also have some more creatures that can help us out with our card draw as well, with Grazilax and Keeper of Fables. Grazilax has, whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. On top of that, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So this can actually be a great way to protect our creatures in combat. If they happen to be blocked, we can just bounce them back to our hand and then recast them. And if we get one creature through on each opponent, we're going to be drawing 3 cards. Speaking of which, Keeper of Fable says, whenever one or more non-human creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So this is a bit more specific, but most of our evasive creatures in this deck are non-human, so it's generally going to apply. Regardless, we also have some different ways to draw things like Verity Circle, Azami Lady of Scrolls, and Archivist. Verity Circle says, whenever a creature opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. So by utilizing Derevi's triggers to tap down our opponent's creatures, we can draw cards. And speaking of drawing cards with Derevi's triggers, Azami Lady of Scrolls and Archivist can really help us out too. Azami has tap and untap wizard you control, draw a card, and Archivist can tap to draw a card. So yeah, even just by targeting each of these with Derevi's triggers over and over again, we can draw a ton of cards. And speaking of drawing a ton of cards, we're also going to be running Diviner's Portent, Commander's Insight, and Opportunity. We've got plenty of ways to generate a ton of mana thanks to Derevi's triggers, and these instant speed draw spells can be fantastic. Diviner's Portent says, roll a d20 and add the number of cards in your hand. 1 through 14 is draw X cards, and 15 plus is scry X, then draw X cards. And then Commander's Insight says, target player draws X cards plus additional card for each time they've cast a commander for the command zone this game. And then Opportunity just simply says, target player draws 4 cards. Moving on though, let's talk about those land auras that can help us take advantage of Derevi's triggers, again by just helping us generate a lot of mana by untapping our lands. So we're going to be utilizing cards like Wild Growth, Fertile Ground, Wolfwillow Haven, Find the Path, Get to Paradise, Weirding Wood, New Horizons, Overgrowth, Market Festival, and Dawn's Reflection. Regardless, lands, as well as those creatures that help us draw cards, are not the only things that we want to untap. Because at the start of the episode, I most definitely mentioned Tims, and actually, if you aren't familiar, Tim is actually the term for a creature that can tap to ping something for 1. The name Tim actually came from the original Prodigal Sorcerer, referring to Tim the Enchanter, which comes from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Regardless, these Tims can tap to ping something for 1. So whether that's a creature or a player's face, these can come in really handy. Especially again with all of our untapped triggers thanks to our commander. But perhaps our best Tim is actually Endbringer, an Eldrazi Tim that has it may untap during each other player's untap step, and of course you can tap to ping something for 1. On top of that, by paying a colorless, we can tap until our creature can attack or block this turn, and by paying colorless, we can tap to draw a card. Regardless, we can actually make any of our creatures into a Tim thanks to Viridian Longbow. It has equipped creature has, tap this creature deals 1 damage to our creature or player. And we can make one Tim the best Tim it can possibly be with Gorgon's Head, which is going to give that Tim Death Touch. So then it can just tap to ping a creature and take that creature out. Now as good as this is, there's still one card in this deck that stands well above the rest. And that card is going to be the Golden Pig of this deck, the number 1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Dismiss into Dream. Dismiss into Dream is an enchantment for 6 and a blue, and it says, each creature your opponents control is an illusionist to its other types, and has, when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. Yeah, this card is absolutely incredible, not just with Tims, but with our commander. Because, yeah, obviously our Tims can tap to target any of our opponent's creatures, and then they're just gone. They have to sacrifice them. And again, on top of that, whenever we hit our opponents with our creatures and our commander triggers, well, we can tap and target any of their creatures, to either tap or untap. It doesn't matter what we choose. They're going to have to sacrifice it regardless just because we targeted it. So yeah, Dismiss in a Dream is an absolutely incredible card in this deck, and that's why it's the Golden Pig. Regardless, we've got yet another high converted mana cost enchantment in this deck that can be quite effective as well with Spawning Grounds. It says Enchant Land. Enchanted Land has tap, create a 5/5 green beast creature token with trample. So yeah, slap this on one of your lands and then just target that land with all your Derevi untap triggers and have fun making a ton of beast creature tokens with trample to then next turn get even more triggers, and you see where this is going. Regardless, we can also finish our opponents off with things like Scale Up, Joriel, Unvaluable Recluse, and Biomass Mutation. By overloading Scale Up, it's going to make all of our creatures into 6/4 green worms. Again, we've got a lot of evasive creatures, so making them into 6/4 creatures, well, we can finish opponents off pretty quickly with that. But we can make them even bigger with Jewelry Element Valuable Recluse, which has pay 4 green until end of turn creatures you control have base power and toughness XX or X the number of cards in your hand. Oh, and on top of that, Joriel can just also, make us cat tokens by us drawing 2 cards in a turn. And then Biomass Mutation can be a great surprise play. It says creature you control have base power and toughness XX until end of turn. Again, with all the evasive creatures that we have, we're going to be able to dish out a lot of damage with this. But now that we've talked about our plan, what are some ways for us to throw a wrench into our opponent's plans? First up, we've got some tappers that can help us deal with our opponent's things with Intrepid Hero and Null Mage Advocate. Intrepid Hero has tap, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. And Null Mage Advocate has tap, return 2 target cards from an opponent's graveyard to their hand, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So with this, we can either just get, some useless cards from an opponent's graveyard back to their hand, like maybe some lands, or we can use this to politic. Regardless, of course, we've got other forms of removal and some wraths as well with Return to Nature, Beast Within, Crush Contraband, Aether Gale, Chroma's Vengeance, Solar Tide, and Dust to Dawn. Again, the vast majority of creatures in this deck are quite small, so yeah, Solar Tide and Dust to Dawn can pretty much be one-sided board wipes in a lot of situations. Regardless, outside of our cards like Siren Storm Tamer and Judge's Familiar, we've got other ways to protect our things like Negate, Unwind, Rewind, and Unbreakable Formation. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, let's talk about the price. Like I said at the start of this episode, every single card in this deck outside of the commander, which is around $3 or so, is less than $1. So this deck is very budget friendly with an estimated cost at $35.26. Also, keep in mind that that cost does include basic lands at 10 cents a piece, so if you already have those basic lands, well, you're gonna have some savings there. And speaking of savings, by buying this deck on TCG Player, you can save even more by utilizing heavily played and damaged cards, because again, remember that those cards need a home too. Though, do keep in mind that this cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.